Harmsen is a realtor, historian, and an author. Born in 1966, she spent the first half of her life in the country of her birth, the Netherlands, and the second half in her adopted hometown in Beaufort, St Lucia. In 1999, Jolien graduated with a PhD on the social history of Beaufort. This was followed by the comprehensive book, A History of St Lucia, authored with co-authors Guy Ellis and Robert DeVoe in 2012. Together, she and her colleague Cecile Tony Wiltshire operate Terra Online Real Estate, which was started in 1999, as well as The Reef, a beach cafe and restaurant, wind and kite surfing center, and the Reef Beach Huts, located on Sandy Beach at the southernmost tip of St. Lucia. Tony and Jolien are both dedicated members of civil society and the local business community, and as such are committed to the sustainable development of St. Lucia in every sense of the word, socially, economically, environmentally, and educationally. Terra Online Real Estate markets property island-wide, from very high-end villas and developments such as Hotel Chocolat and Rabot Estate in Soufrière, and various villas at Malgré-Tout and Anne-Chassenay, to modest homes and residential and agricultural land. Being based in Beaufort, they specialize in properties south of Castries. Castries is the capital of St. Lucia. They are founding members of the Realtors Association of St. Lucia and members of the Association of International Property Professionals, AIPP. In today's session, I'm delighted to speak with Jolien as she shares a little about her coming to St. Lucia story.
Welcome. Welcome to another video with Global Property Connections. And our guest today is Jolien Harmsen from Terra Online, all the way in my beloved St. Lucia, island of St. Lucia. Welcome, Jolien. So happy to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Today, I wanted to share an experience from an expatriate perspective. So a lot of clients in the past that I've been able and fortunate to help, they had an experience. This was not their first home. They were not native to the island. And they had to experience some things for the very first time, some things that they never thought they would have to encounter. And there's a bit of a cultural change as it goes through. I remember my own personal experiences living in Martinique and then moving to Canada and moving back to St. Lucia. And funny enough, even though I was originally from the island, I found that I needed I would say about a year, almost as long as 2 years to truly get comfortable again in my new home again. Believe it or not, I didn't think I would have to do that the second time around. So I did it when I went back to St. Lucia, and I went through it again when I went back to Canada. But today I want to hear about your experience, because you've come from again, a European country, coming to the island, and oh my goodness, what you've achieved in St. Lucia is remarkable. It's inspiring. And I'm hoping that our listeners today, our viewers today, will take away some of that story and recognize that anything is possible, including moving to a beautiful tropical island and rediscovering other dreams. So Jolien, how and why St. Lucia? How did you come about St. Lucia?
Totally by chance, really. I was working for a University of Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and I was hired to do a PhD. It's a 4-year program, and my story is very atypical. Everybody always comes to St. Lucia on holidays, they fall in love, and then they decide to want to buy here. I did not want to come out here. I didn't apply for the job. I was asked to apply for the job eventually, and they had already made up their minds that they wanted me for that position because I had done a master's. But my heart was in Australia. I'm born and raised in Holland. I lived in Australia. I did a master's in social history in Central Australia, and I was desperate to go back and do my PhD there, and I couldn't get that together. And my faculty basically wanted me for this position that they had, and they hired me for it. And I had to go either to Latin America or the Caribbean. And I was really dragged into it, kicking and screaming. Once I had to do a case study. I wasn't going to go to the Dutch Caribbean because there are 115 Suriname specialists in Holland alone. I wasn't going to be 116. And I was quite keen on going to the English-speaking Caribbean because the records are in London. And I thought that would be nice to be able to go to London for a couple of weeks to do some of the archival studies. So somebody told me, I didn't know anything about the Caribbean, much to my shame. It's possible to be white and Dutch and grow up and not know anything about these places, unfortunately. Somebody told me Jamaica is dangerous, and Trinidad, wasn't on it either. I was going to go to Dominica. Jean-Rolf Trouillot had just written a very, very good book about Dominica, so I felt there was nothing new to add to that. So St Lucia was next on the list. I didn't know anything about it. At the airport, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, there was a Surinamese girl who checked me in. She didn't know anything about St Lucia. Everybody's asking me which country is that, So it really started from a mile back, like I said, much to my shame, really. Anyway, I ended up here. I landed in September 1994, and there had been a tropical storm. And as I was boarding the airplane at Gatwick Airport, there was a St Lucian person who was boarding with me who told me, oh my God, they've just had a tropical storm. And in my full Dutch ignorance, I said, well, it's the tropics in it. So if you get a storm, I guess it's a tropical storm. Not realizing that a tropical storm is like a small hurricane, which is really not pretty. So yeah, I came to St Lucia for a month to explore and make connections to prepare me for my research. I didn't like it. I was not impressed with the island. I thought it was very small, and I thought it was a bit messy. I thought it was noisy. I had a lot of white girl that I didn't enjoy very much. But I wasn't going to quit my job, and I really wanted to do a PhD. So I came back for a year, and I gradually started to like it. Being Dutch, the first thing I did after waiting on the bus on a Sunday morning for an hour and a half was I took 500 EC dollars and I bought a bicycle. So I lived in Vuurfort, which is the flat part of the island. So I was known as the girl with the bike and the boots and the cap the first few months here. And eventually, after a couple of months, I remember riding my bicycle home one afternoon along the runway. I was living in Black Bay, and saying, yeah, this place is growing on me. And then I thought, yeah, like mold on the shower curtain. So I really came at it in reverse. Very different story from most people who end up in St Lucia, who fall in love with the landscape, the people, right from the start. So, I'm not going to lie, I didn't. But when I eventually did lose my heart to St Lucia, I lost it completely and entirely, and I've been here 26 years now.
I know, it's incredible. It's incredible. You have, and you've immersed into it like few others I know that have a similar story, in that it literally it mold on a shower. I would maybe say a rock, something more organic, but okay. But it's so true.
Shower curtain, as you can tell. But yeah, I landed here, and then very quickly, sorry, just to cut it short, I traveled back and forth a lot in the beginning because I was still employed by university. I graduated in 1999. I have a PhD in history. I wrote a case history on the history of Vuurfort, so I know the place very well. I think that helped as well. Is once I got to really know the people and their story and their backstory. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter where you live in the world. There are always people, and you're always going to build those connections, even if they are weak links. But it's the strength of weak links. Once people start to tell you hi and hello, and you realize that your lives become meshed together, that's really when it caught me. And by then I also got involved in running the Reef. We run a beach cafe on Sandy Beach in Vuurfort. And then we expanded. We have a water sports center, wind and kite surfing, brilliant conditions. We have rooms now, so we run bed and breakfast. And then out of that, we started running St Lucia Online, the website for St Lucia. When internet first came to St Lucia, we used to share the weekly news. Before any of the newspapers came online, we used to read the papers and rehash the news and get that up there by midnight for the St Lucians in the diaspora. And then eventually, out of my PhD came a history of St Lucia. So together with Robert Devoe and Guy Ellis, we wrote the first full comprehensive it's a very detailed, very calm, very deliberate. It quotes a lot of primary sources as well, but it's a full, complete history of St Lucia, starting at the Big Bang, right through to the death of Sir John Compton, who was our Prime Minister for almost 40 years. We really did the best we could with that book. We didn't rush it. It took almost 16 years. We published it ourselves. It's the best-selling book in St Lucia, and I think it's been very well received. And if I may say so myself, I think rightly so. It's filled a niche that really needed filling. If I segue into real estate, what I personally really like about doing real estate and having that historical background is that when I look at properties in the countryside, especially, sometimes it's an old farmer that will show you the boundary pegs, and there might be ruins on the property, and then he knows that from his lifetime of having heard stories about this property. I would probably know that same property from the archives and be able to put it in context, of St Lucia's history, what was going on at the time. So if we look at, let's say, land at Morne-les-Arts in the south of the island, near Balambush, I can see the ruins there. I know that was probably part of the estate. I'll know what crops were grown there. I'll know who used to live there. I'll know why there are people living in that area with more Indian looks than some of the other parts of St Lucia, because those were the indentured laborers that were brought into work at Balambush estate after the end of slavery in 1838. So then the story starts to make sense, not only horizontally, but vertically as well. And that's one of the reasons I love doing real estate, as well as history.
Yeah. And which is one of the fascinations of it, of how you really have become fully immersed into the island. I don't see, especially Vieux-Fort and those areas, I couldn't see arriving there and someone not knowing what the reef is, or not knowing who Jolien is, or not, what I mean? You have created such an imprint in the history of the fabric of that particular area, especially in St Lucia. And you're
very kind, Patrice, but you overlook the fact that I'm 6'2" and white, and I drive an old Land Rover, so it's kind of hard to miss me. So,
but in defense of that statement, they don't see that on the reef. They don't see that when
If I speak to somebody on the phone and they don't know who I am, all I have to say is 6'2", tall, skinny white girl. That usually nails it. If they don't know that,
with the Land Rover,
then that'll do it.
The Land Rover and the dogs with the 3 legs. Like, there's so much of Jolien that what I love about, again, when I introduce clients to Jolien, whether they're developers or they're looking for their next home in the Caribbean or their first home in the Caribbean, is because I'm introducing them to someone that has heart and soul in this. You're going to get a true picture of the experience, because she's talking from firsthand experience at all levels. From a developer perspective, oh my goodness, the stories, the fights, the battles. But you've worked through it and you've come through to the other side to some degree. I know it's a continual process, but it is outstanding. I mean, we land on the airport and the first place we want to go is the reef. We're about to leave, and the last place we want to see on the island before we go is the reef. So it's a historical component now. It's part of the traditions. It's part of the rituals of so many of us who come and go from the islands.
Yeah.
Right.
And seeing children grow up at the reef, see them climb the trees and then come back with university degrees and start their families. And
that's right.
And the other thing, Patrice, that I think is important to stress there is it's such a small place. There's no point telling any lies, because it's going to come back on you so fast. And if I sell somebody a home, if I realize that the south is not for you and you need to have like condo and golf and marine and all that stuff, I will pass you on to a realtor up north. That used to be you. Nowadays, somebody else. If the north is for you, then that's great. Go there. If the south, as I was saying earlier, I think to you, if the south, if it sings to you, if it makes you tick, if that's for you, if you understand St Lucia in that way, then I'm going to meet you. I'm going to be chatting in the queue at the supermarket. So whatever I tell you before you buy the house, it has better come from a good place, because you're going to be here. We're going to be living together. You're going to be a customer at the Reef chances, or next door or one of the other restaurants. It's a very small place. So there's no point pretending to be something else. And I take my work very seriously. I may not take myself very seriously all the time, you know. You might look at me and not immediately feel that that's somebody, I don't do the dress up thing and the shiny shoes and everything. I remember once walking out to clients. I tend to meet clients at the Reef. So I hadn't met these people before. We had made an appointment. They showed up at the Reef. I was in my office. I was busy. So I walked out and I wasn't wearing shoes because I'm at the Reef. I'm on the beach. And they couldn't get over the realtor with no shoes. And I'm thinking, yeah, but it's true. I mean, I hadn't done it for effect. I just happened to be barefoot. But that is the lifestyle you're looking for, I presume. So yes, I can be the realtor and I don't necessarily need to wear shoes. And if I wear an old shirt, I wear an old shirt because it's hot and it's comfortable and I'm in my own place here, That's how it feels.
Yeah. That or she's doing repairs on the Land Rover. And sometimes that's what you were going into to go see the raw land. You needed a 4-wheel drive.
I've got a really good mechanic now.
No, it's great. And I think, some great memories, but I hope our listeners can appreciate that is that it is what you make out of it as well. And if you're in for the long haul, there is the good, there is the bad, there is the ugly, and I think that could be said anywhere in the world. As you highlighted, what makes it worth it in the end? What makes it worth it in the end for you, Jolien?
I guess the people. I don't even particularly care for. I'm not even really a swimmer. Sometimes it's weeks I don't swim. I live on the beach and it's weeks I don't swim. It's not necessarily the hot weather. I never had a problem with the cold weather either. I didn't come looking for palm trees and beaches, There's something about the people in St Lucia that is, they're easy to anger. It passes quickly. They can be very loud. They can be there's a special kind of humor, and wherever you go, people, I'm sure if I'd gone back to Australia, I would have found my community as well, but I'm very comfortable. Okay, 2 things, let me put it like this, 2 things. When you live on the periphery of the world, of society, you look at the center of power from a different angle, and it's interesting to look at it from that angle. Not only if you live in the center of Toronto or in New York City or in Amsterdam, it's easy to surround yourself with people who are all like you. And then you start to believe that you're the navel of the world and that's how it is and you must be right about it. And you're not forced to deal and interact with people who are not like you, who may not think like you, who may not come where you come from. In a small place like Beaufort, you have no choice. And I guess partly because of my work as well, but I've moved through all layers of society. We had a book launch at Government House with the Governor General. Incidentally, he's a very, very rootsy kind of person as well. But we deal with very high-end developers. I'm comfortable. We deal with lawyers, but we also go in. I also find myself in very poor parts of town or in the countryside, dealing with people who may not be able to read and write and sometimes speak real. But the essence of being human is what connects all of us. And I am because we are. That's the African expression of Ubuntu. And that is really what matters. And I guess that comes where I happen to come from personally, a countryside, a small place. I feel very comfortable in that setting. It's lovely to be able to visit a city. I love going to London or Amsterdam or New York or, it's Magnique even, if that's the nearest place. It's nice to have access to all these things. But at the end of the day, what really matters is your soul. And St Lucia and St Lucians in their own understanding of it and my understanding of it, we share that. I think that's why I like it here.
Beautiful. And so eloquently said. And I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And I will end there. Thank you so much, Jolien, for sharing a little bit about the parts of St. Lucia that have stayed with you and how you've been impacted by it and how you've come about it. And I think it's beautiful. Yeah. So to our viewers, if you like this video, please press the like button. And if you like to be notified for the next one, please press the subscribe button. Thank you again for viewing, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Jolien.
Bye, Patrice. Nice seeing you again. Bye.